The final class combines many of the elements which we have done previously to give us a scene that has distant hills, a focal point in the middle, and close-up features of medium and large tree trunks. This includes a slight alteration in technique to leave one side of the painting unpainted until almost the end. Darks will be the finishing touch in the tree trunk, with textures to allow the eyes to bring it forward. Another challenge is not to be too heavily influenced by the dark photo printouts. We have to allow the trees in the middle to have some variety of tone, and shape or silhouette has once again become very important. Welcome again tonight, and we're looking at doing another, you know me, I like my darks. It's more interest, gives you something to get your teeth into. But as you can see from here, we're not so dark that it looks, photos always make things more darker, I think, than what we want to paint them. So we have to again work with what's happening in our reference, but at the same time, you still want to be able to have the artistic element to it, so that we're doing things that are nicer. Yeah, because my photos tend to be a little bit ordinary sometimes. And the other thing you might notice here is we've talked before about formatting. As you can tell, I haven't actually used my long skinnies this time. I did actually use my full piece of paper, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of the time you can get away with a landscape, you can get away with actually having the format different, but you do have to be aware that it doesn't work with all subjects to do that. It wouldn't happen if we were doing a row of buildings, for instance. That would be very screwy very quickly. So I think what's happened here is that we probably have a wider section of hill, and we certainly have a wider section of road and other things coming behind this tree. So I think I was going to do it as a more of a panoramic tonight, but I actually kind of like it the way it is. We might as well use the whole piece of paper. Don't see any real reason why not. So where I would sometimes grid this so that I get the proportions right, there is one other way you can do that, even on your paper here. Sorry, just looking for something I could write on. So if you needed to change, you wanted to keep your basic formatting the same, but you wanted to actually use a bigger piece of paper or a different sizing, the way you can do that sometimes is to, on your piece of paper here, you can play with your formatting a bit. So you could pretty much extend your tree out. You can maybe have that be a little bit longer there, and of course you can still bring this one up as well, and you can do the same thing down here. So you can actually bring your road a little bit closer here, and that way everything else stays the same except your background and your foreground. I've been known to actually just increase my foreground if I needed to. Can increase the size sometimes, depending on especially if it's more of a portrait one. And so that's a different way of actually working with a similar piece of paper, because that will give me more of, I'm just going to pretend that there's a ruler here, more of a closer relationship to my piece of paper that I'm going to work on. So sometimes that's not a bad option, to change the format without it going astray. Because if you, sometimes, but I do like landscapes because they're fairly forgiving. You can just play with them quite a bit. So this one here, we're going to think in layers tonight because there's a whole element of background here. There's then those two main trees, and finally our large one in the foreground. So working with trees in the landscape, you're going to get all of these different elements. The other thing is these little trees sitting again in the background, the mid-distance. So that will also give us that a little bit more practice at putting them in when the paper's a little bit wet. So that's also good practice. As of course we've got our little house today. We're not going to get too startling on it, but again, when you're talking houses in the landscape, you also need to have a nice shape. So do have to be just a little bit more careful with the shape that you're drawing there as well. So I probably will increase the size of my mountain here so that it comes somewhere up from about here. So I'm sort of looking at it going, the white area here still being up fairly high. Then I'll look at the next one, which will be this area through the middle here, where that house is sitting. And the house is probably somewhere around about here. Just very briefly put that in. There's a nice grassy area behind that as well. And the other line that you can see there is more a variation in the hill itself. In fact, what's happening is that's actually all trees, shrubbery, I think, trees on the top of the land of that hill, and then it goes into pretty much just dry. It was still pretty dry down in Tassie when I took this photo. We hadn't had that rain yet, so and then of course there's this road. Now, often I don't like roads that just lead in, but this one's all right because it actually leads you back into here through that tree. So that probably is okay. So something like that. I might just go up a bit higher. Now the large tree on the side, there's a little bit of sketching here, but not a lot. We don't want to overdo it. And of course we can just work through some of there's a few contours in this very old tree, obviously, or at least a very large one or the other. So I might just go a little bit wider on that one, just here, so that we make a decent feature of this tree. So don't put huge amounts of textures on that, because again we can work with that with our brushes most of the time. I will draw both of these trees in. Now this one here, oh by the way, in case you're wondering, funnily enough I'm going to leave that pole out. And I'm actually going to leave that one out as well. I don't, I mean, it could be a really interesting design element, but no, not from my point of view. The fence, on the other hand, which I think I forgot about or ended up deciding not to do it, that's one we can decide later. So I'm going to suggest that we don't draw the fence at this time. If we decide we want it later on, easy done, because it's all darker than what's behind it anyway. So this tree over here just looks like a blob of foliage. So working on what's happening with these ones, because those two trees are obviously the same type of tree, at least they are from my point of view. So I'm going to actually, it's quite central. I want the house to be the main feature, so I might actually just bring this tree back a little bit, a bit more over towards this one. Connect those two a little bit. And it's actually in front of that. Hang on, I must have done something wrong here. wasn't watching, so I might just change that up because that tree is actually in front of where the yep, something like that. And then there's this part that goes behind, and then the road in front of that. So I wonder if I've actually put all that too low. I could have, nah, it's okay. Let's leave it like that and we'll work with it. I will anyway. So that can probably, I'm sure I've got an eraser here somewhere. All of these lines, I try to avoid them if I can. So I just need some basic ones. That looks better. So, okay, I think I'm happy with that for the moment. And over here, I'm also going to give this one, you can't actually see a trunk there at all, but I think it would work better if there was. So, and it's going to be quite on the side as well. Even just a little bit of it. And as far as drawing all of that, I think I might leave that until we've done that landscape first. And the same with the foliage on this one. The foliage is darker, that foliage is darker. So long as I have the main trunks just put there so that we can play with them later, because most of what we're going to be doing is going to be going through those dark ones, okay? So when we paint this first layer, we're effectively going to be well, we'll leave this one. We'll leave that one because it's a huge shape on the side. But these ones, we can effectively paint right through them because there's not a lot of darks in that section really. What I do need to draw though is this little house. Now, it's the way it looks here, and one thing I don't like about this is the fact that I've ended up with this little halo over the house, so I'm going to try and not avoid doing that this time. Now there is a chimney or two here. We're not going to go too much into doesn't have to be a complicated house. And I like the idea of not having it be a square shape, so I probably will put a little bush in front of part of it and probably just bring a bit of the foliage around there. There's a bit of foliage along the side here and even a little bit over here as well. So we can have a bit of foliage there, going over to this side here where there's perhaps a few bushes or something as well along that side. Now there is a roof on this, so we do need to probably put some sort of roof in here. There's not much to suggest what's happening in that house. What you can often do is find a different reference, one that you might have in a similar thing but a nicer looking house, and use that instead. I've done that before. I don't know that I've got any others in our references for what we're doing at the moment, so we'll probably just put up with it. And I think that's about the sketch for the moment. So keeping it simple, large shape on this side, a few contours for our landscape and the road, a tree here that's going to have some foliage, but I don't want to draw that in yet. I may just give myself a little bit of a shape later on, but at the moment I want to get this landscape down with its areas before I start putting foliage. If I start putting drawing, what can happen is that once the paint goes over, you can't actually erase the pencil that easily. So I find it's easier for certain things to just have another layer of sketching as well. So if you need to. So I have a house with a chimney, not too complicated hopefully. I don't know, and see whether that's actually going to be a thing. And we probably could put a couple of, we'll work it out. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going to be using, again, large brushes. So get your best ones out. There's not much colour in that sky, and I like that contrast. That contrast of having a quite a bright sky, because obviously this is not a sunny day, because otherwise we'd be getting shadows in here. I've also known artists to take a photo like this and make it into a sunny day. That takes a different level of expertise, I think, and I'm certainly not interested in doing that tonight. It would end up much more contrasty, and it would also end up having to put in shadows and things like that. I think we haven't done the shadow thing too much this term, but it is, so I don't know, it's just the way it worked out. So I'm going to use a little bit of cerulean in my my cloud, my sky, a little hint of pink. I like, or even maybe a bit of yellow even. So first thing I'm going to do is actually put some paint down, water down, sorry. I have just a hint of yellow in my brush already. Okay, so I'm just going to go up to the mountain for the moment. I don't even have to, I could leave that as a blank space, I probably will. Just have a bit of bleed through happening there. So just a little bit of colour in here. That's too much. I just want it to be just the barest hint of colour. And really that's about it. I'm not going to go any further with that sky. It will come across being quite light enough, strong enough, and that's about it. Just a hint of variation there. I'm going to continue with, I don't mind that that's settled now, it'll settle for a minute while I mix some violet grey. So using the middle of my palette, as I've done before, using a bit of ultramarine with some pink, but what I'll do there is come across with, again, a nice bit of violet and blue-grey. I think that should work quite nicely. But before I use that, what I'm going to do is put down the main body of that hill. Now again, I might end up with something that's a little bit orangey. But sienna, no, maybe I'll use a bit of raw umber with that pink again. We did that last week, I think. So looking for something that's nice, yep. So I am going to put that down, that orangey raw umber with a little bit of violet, raw umber with a little bit of rose, I should say. So I'm going to ignore that tree, but I'm not, and I'm going to just put that in. Now, as you can see, I'm actually going to be painting right up to this.
So you didn't wet that, did you?
I didn't, but I could have put a little bit of water down. I wouldn't have certainly don't flood it. Now the reason I did that with the pink going all the way through is so that when I come back with this, it's almost like that was going to be my base colour, but this is what I wanted to do. that extra layer of colour through there makes this just really pop. And just a hint of that through. Now, I don't know whether that'll come across as looking like trees, but if it does, fine. If it doesn't, it'll still work all right. If I really wanted it to be a little bit of textural, it's just in the way you hold your brush a bit. No, I don't know that I'll bother. I think that's probably... So this is not very wet, okay? That was one of the main reasons I didn't wet the paper, because the paint it's going down itself is enough for it to work through with the next layer. And I've got a bit of variation, partly because my board is on a lean still, and so it's the top line that sometimes makes it look like it's trees. Just want to get rid of that bit of white. Don't need that in this particular area. Okay, so that's that part, and before I finish anything else I need to at least put that next bit down. So yeah, there is a few layers, elements first that need to go down before we continue on, and I probably still need a little bit of that pinky red even into this area, just a bit, because that keeps it all consistent. Now I am going to paint around my house. Because I want to keep that shape going. You can see how that's already, just because of the type of paint I've used, it's already a little bit brighter than what the photo is. And I need to blend that. I don't want them to be separate. You can't have that, that hill being so totally different to the bit in front. Which one was I using for my violet? That one. While I'm going, I'm just going to sorry, we are going to finish the rest of the foreground, by the way, because if we don't do this now it won't sort of come across. I should be wetting that area there so that that just bleeds through and I don't have... Okay, perhaps not what I was exactly after, but that makes life interesting, doesn't it? I should have wet this area here just enough so that that bleeds through. So now I'm going to have a cauliflower right there. Oh well, too bad. Okay, next is another bit of green. I'm going to go back in and do a bit more of that. Just here as well. Just a bit of variation there. Coming back in with a bit of green. I'm not trying to keep these particular sections as separated as it looks like on that picture. Something like that. Now, before I go any further, I have to get back into here. What I'm looking for is a nice deep dark green. Now, by rights, you should have mix that up before we go, and of course I told you that, didn't I? No, sorry about that. Because the best time to put this in is right now when that's still a little bit moist. That is too not right. So that would be good. like that, up against the tree. Now, best way to do this is to actually have a bit of burnt sienna and your dark green on your brush at the same time. That will make it more varied. I really like putting more than one paint on my brush at the same time. It really works so much nicer. Shapes are always going to be an interesting thing to think about. So a little bit of extra dark on the bottom and a bit of this over here as well. Oh, that's kind of nice. Okay, so this time, let's see what happens there. That should be fine. And just want a bit of that through here as well, I think. All right, I think I might leave that, that just the way it is, it'll be fine. And finish this off with a bit of burnt sienna and ultramarine for the road. Even though I don't necessarily want it to be a paved road as such, I don't mind it being a bit bush-like. So I'm mixing these colours somewhat together, somewhat separately. And whatever else happens here we'll do later on anyway, because I can always go back over this. Just want to get that whole foreground down in one hit. And lastly, again, a bit brighter, because we're bringing it forward. A bit of burnt sienna in there, and just because I can, just a bit of darkness there as well. So yes, I'm sorry, there is a fair bit in that one to get that first layer down. That's what I meant to do right from the word go. This is actually just to wet this area here so that there's no hard line. Wouldn't matter hugely, but it's actually easier to work with if we don't. Okay. Yep, I think that's about it. So you've got to, we're talking layers. And the only thing, if you don't get this in while it's still a little bit moist, don't panic. We can always do it later when it's dry. If it's too hard, just leave it until later. But I do want these layers. Or I want every part of that area just to have some paint on it, except for our house. Okay? And the tree. So sometimes after a day of work, I come down, instead of just taking a few minutes just to think about what I was supposed to do, even though I've done an example and so I had a plan, I do feel like I actually just rushed the whole thing. And I'm just going to take you through the steps again, and I'll probably do a bit of fix-up on this as well now. I think the thing I rush the most is the sketch, because I feel like it's all too low. I would have preferred that hill to have been higher. I would have preferred this area to be a little bit less. I would have preferred that house to be somewhere about here, so that it drew me back. What I'm getting with this is that hill is really huge, and that there's a long area between here and here. And then this tends to be a little bit too small for where it is. I'm going to work with it, and I'm going to do the best I can with where it is at the moment. And then I would have preferred this to look more like a country track rather than a highway, because I was trying to avoid that element of it as well. But like I said, I did rush that all of that as more than I should have. So having not been terribly happy with my first wash, I'm going to go back over and revisit parts of it. The sky, look, I could go darker with that if I wanted to, but the foliage is going to take up the majority of that anyway, so that one doesn't bother me too much. This area here, I like the way I've put it down to an extent. I'm wondering whether a little bit of green in there even, just to hint more at the fact that it's trees and in way back. Blue-green, not a real, still being very grey, but I might just put in a little bit of that. What I really don't like is this area of light here. I find it's just too light and it's drawing my eye. So I'm going to blend that through a bit more. And hopefully, and this ridge here, it's actually a slight cauliflower just there. It puts a stopper. It's like those two areas are separate, and again, I don't like that particularly. In fact, what it looks like, it says that there's another hill. I don't know whether you're getting that from back there. It's like there's another slight hill there, and then there's another one back behind. Now, none of those are bad things, but it's things that I don't particularly like, and so I'm just going to deal with that. What I could do here is put a little row of very, very distant trees along this area here, even part of it. So, and I probably wouldn't mind going a bit darker here, so again that there's more of a suggestion of trees, an area of tree. Having said that, a lot of that could be getting covered over by that side tree as well. But, I mean, I might as well do it, and that way you can, because as we get through paintings, I think there's always options, and I like the idea of, it may not be lots of foliage just in this area. It might be just that a taller trunk, and then I'll work with this area as well. I do like that, and I'm going to have to cover it all up. Oh well, we'll see how it goes. And so what's happening here is this almost looks like a rise, so that it's again on a different, and then it's almost looking like we're on this rise, and then all of that's down in the valley a little bit as well. So there's all these things to look at, and a lot of these you don't see as you're painting them. And I'm probably going to mix that one up a bit too, and I really find that way too yellow for where it is at the moment too. So I'm going to have another go at this. And there's a little thing that's called cure it or kill it. And so I'm actually really, really happy just to do one or the other. So I'm going to re-wet this area. Now I'm re-wetting a little bit because I will just put paint through there. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of blue-green. Nothing too heavy, just in there. Because I didn't mind this area too much. I quite liked it. But hopefully that will give it the appearance of having, and I'm going to come through here with some of that as well, just to offset that brightness that was there. So now this next section I'm going to use that same blue-green. It's a bit of ultramarine with a dark green that I've got here, and I'm going to just again wet. Yeah, I need to wet part of it up because I don't want that to be a straight line. I want that to be still blended because we are working background here. Sometimes it just pays to step back and take a deep breath. And I can be a shocker for forgetting that I need to breathe, to just getting through things as quickly as possible. Sometimes that's fine, but most of the time and what was happening is that I wasn't engaging my brain well. And so what that meant is that where I would normally be thinking about shape, I was thinking about tone, thinking about the colour, all of those things, it was all a little bit missing. So let's play with that now and see whether that makes a difference. Now I put a bit of burnt sienna in there. What that did is it gave it a different colour. So it actually brought it forward from that, from the background. So, sorry, I just need to have another look here. Just going to quickly put that up. I want to see where I'm at. I think I still want to go a little bit different there. And I might put a bit of extra blue in there because I think it still needs to stay back a bit. A bit more of the blue-green. Yep, that's better. And just want to make sure that that's not too dark just there. On my brush I meant. So now I still have that pinkiness coming through, but hopefully I've disguised a bit of it. And I might just have the hint of suggestion of trees just there as well. You might notice that I am actually skipping where my tree trunk is, but not to the point where it's outlined. I know that that tree trunk is going to be much darker, so I'm not too concerned if this doesn't go immediately into that section. That's fine. All right, that's okay, I think. Could be a little bit more often if I'm not quite sure, I'll just put it up again. If I'm not sure whether something's working or whether it's not, I'll just quickly, have a quick look at it. Is it working? Is it not? Do I need to do something different? And that way, when I'm working here, I actually get to evaluate as I'm going instead of waiting until I've done the whole lot. Okay, so this area here, I don't mind it, but I think a little bit of change up won't hurt it. And I think at the moment I might as well just put a bit of texture on there, because then I'll probably just leave it alone. And that'll be enough to change that area up, I think, without it needing anything too much more. So I might just quickly grab a bit of that. I love this pinky colour coming through. I think that just is nice sometimes. Let's see whether that works. Alright, so we're up to that. Now hopefully, I don't know whether I can do anything about my house being too small, but once I've worked with the rest of the areas, maybe that won't be as big a deal. Now I'm also starting to get lots and lots of dry brush effect, and it's too far back for that to be a thing. So again, it would actually help me if I had my reference. I don't know what happened to it. No, it's here. It's here. It's here. I just didn't have it with me. And so I might just, that part's fine, happy with that. And so I might just work with this. I'm just going to soften some of that out, especially here. And I might end up putting some trees or something across the front of that house, but that can probably wait until a bit later on. Can you see how that makes a difference to just by softening those areas off with water? It just takes away the whiteness of it. I'm not really doing anything else. I might put a little bit there because I don't like that colour. Oh, that'll do. It's a bit different. I'm going to sort of spread it around a bit more. Variation is usually never a bad thing. The other thing I'm not real fussed on is how heavy this road is. So now remember, there's plenty. This is not really the end of where I'm going with this, but I might just see if I can soften some of this back. A good quality watercolour paper will take a bit of work. Will take a bit of...
So that's just a water brush?
Just a water brush. And I'm actually using the flat because it's a bit tougher. I tried just the round one, but it was too soft. And I wouldn't, in this particular case, trying to change things up, a sable wouldn't do it either. Both of those are synthetics. So this way I get to really get into it. And you see how much paint I'm pushing there? And I don't mind some of that on the edge. It doesn't have to disappear entirely. I just felt that that whole area was a little bit too heavy. Same here a little bit. This one will be easy enough to, this area just here. Okay. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of that pink. See, one of the colours that's running all the way through here is that bit of pink. And I think that keeps it consistent. I don't necessarily want huge amounts of it, but little bits of it here and there just gives it, warms it up a bit. Because I find when you're using anything to do with bitumen, it's really cold. Really cold. And I just, yeah. I rarely ever do just one colour on bitumen. I don't mix just a regular grey and use that. One of my favourite mixes is burnt sienna and ultramarine. That gives me that grey, but I try not to mix them into one colour. It's much nicer if you can have that bit of variation there. Really the last thing I'm just going to do here is introduce a bit of that green back into that again. Just because I want it to, again, firstly become less yellow, but also just to bring it into the foreground a bit more with a bit of red, bit of green foliage sort of thing. Okay, I think I'm a little happier with that. And that last bit just ran on me. Oh, it don't matter, it's a foreground. Oh look, I've got a rock there now, awesome. I'm happy with that. Okay, so really I was going to be doing my trees next, but I might actually just put a little bit of colour on that building now too while I'm at it. And all I need is a bit of sandstone colour. It doesn't, again, I might just go a little bit. I don't want it to be too heavy.
So what colour did you put on?
Pretty much the same as what I've used him on both. It's just a little bit more yellow than the reddish pink around it. And I'm just going to assume that and again I'm going to pick up a bit of that blue violet, blue there, Just very, very, no, actually I'm not. I think I'll leave it like it is at the moment. Let's leave it like that with the white roof. Could though, perhaps, no. I think anything else I do to the house will be, I just needed a bit of not whiteness on it now so that it become part of the landscape. There will be more to do with that one shortly. I think that's it. Do you want to go back and have another look at your own? Yeah, I think we all do tonight. Usually whenever I don't do mine well enough, it makes it harder for you to do it as well too. So, all right, let's have another look at them. Okay, so having a quick look at this, I'm much happier with this now. I've got different layers happening. I've got bits of far distance now. It feels like it's actually sitting more in the distance. And what's funnily enough happened here, it looks like to me anyway, is that we then have this area of higher ground and pushed it back, and so there's almost like a valley behind it now. And this is a great thing about a landscape. It's rather forgiving, and you can actually, so long as you can use your artistic eyes to work out what's going on and how you can change things up, it actually helps. What I'm going to do now is put those two large trees in. We're going to be looking at darks, okay? So first things are about doing the colour mixing. For a dark grey, which these trees are fairly dark grey, all of them. You get to see what they actually look like by what's happening in this big one, because they are basically the same tree. And so what I'm using here is, without being mixed entirely, is burnt umber and ultramarine. If I wanted to, I can also use some burnt sienna. In fact, I think that might be a better option. Burnt sienna and ultramarine give me slightly lighter, and I think we'll still get as much dark as I need, but it will also create that way of looking. Now, on top of this then is also some foliage. Again, we're going really dark. There is the option of going with immediately a dark green. That is, so a dark green is a tube colour. This one's, I think, either a Peroline green or a Daniel Smith colour called Deep Sap Green. It's one I like as well. There's others. And if you add it with a bit of extra blue, you get that sort of look. And again, a little bit of variation with burnt sienna will give us a nice foliage colour as well. If you don't have, if you only have phthalo, I'll show you a different way of getting that dark green. Now, this is a phthalo colour. There's plenty of them. Phthalo blue, phthalo green, what's some other ones? It's quite an intense blue, but watch what happens when I put it with burnt sienna. It still stays quite dark, but mixing it through enough to get it off that blueness does actually work. And though I find the phthalo colours quite hard to work with, it's because often what happens is that you end up with this sort of, a little bit of it still there, and it always just comes across as being a little bit wrong, having that, at least to my eyes. So just think about that, how that works as well. Which is why I've gone for a dark green as part of my palette. I just find sometimes it's just not worth trying to mix it. and it's easier to have that as a base colour and then play with it, which is often what I do now. Same with the mid green. I do the same with it. I have it as a base colour, but then I play with it. Okay, so now what we need to look for is our shapes. Actually, I should still just put that back up there so I can see. Now, I did have a tree trunk here. I can't see most of it now. I kind of liked what was happening in here, and I like this too, but at the moment it still does need to be. I think I'm going to have that. I might have this tree trunk be more than what's suggested in this photo, and I think I'm just going to have a suggestion of, just very lightly, I'm just going to pencil in where I might have some foliage. What happens down here, I'll decide once I have done some of it. I would prefer to do less now rather than cover it all over and then think, oh, I've gone too far. So work with that, and the same happens here. Now I have got this tree trunk here again, and just going to restate that so that I know exactly where it is. Okay, now I've also just following the lay of my land there, so I don't want that too much, and again watching sort of what's going on in the background. Sorry?
It's covering all the street.
Yeah, I don't mind some of it being covered, but I don't want it to be everywhere. So I might just have a little bit less and maybe just go down into here and see where that goes. So I'll do less now and then think about whether I need to go, whether that's reading right, and I need to see what happens with it then. So tree trunk first, and I'll just do one tree and then I'll do the other. So this one here on the left is, my left anyway, is slightly darker, slightly further back, I think. Sorry, hang on, let me have another look. No, sorry, other way around. It's actually the one that's in front, and I'd prefer it to go that way. Okay, so I might start with this one. Dark, and so straight in with some dark colour. Bit of burnt sienna, bit of ultramarine, and having them both on my brush at the same time, but separate, gives me variation that I wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And that I might leave for the moment, and I just need to muck this up on the bottom. So it just doesn't, still needs to be, trees are anchored into the, actually growing out of the ground, that one. So now I'm working with still very dark, and my usual way of holding my brush on its side so that I get some nice scumbling, some dry brush marks, some interesting shapes, all of the above, and when necessary, my fingers. Now I also want to come across this tree trunk, because tree trunks are not necessarily isolated from their foliage. You've got to remember that as part as well. So they often have foliage that is actually over top of it as well. Oops, I don't want to go too far down that way at the moment. And I feel almost feeling like my brush is just starting to get a little bit too big. So if I felt like it, I could go down a size And I'm going to just come back in here. Now this doesn't have to be the last layer on this tree foliage either. So I just wanted to get some down. I might just increase what I've done here and maybe using a different colour, a bit of extra burnt sienna. Again, the idea behind that is that there's some variation. Like my variation. Might sound a little bit strange that I say burnt sienna as what I was putting in, but again, it's still very blue-grey, more so than green, if that makes sense. There's a hint of green in amongst all this, but at the same time, it's not necessarily green. Alright, that's probably as much as I want to do on that one for the moment. Because I think it's still a little bit isolated. I want to see that. This is why I keep putting it up, so that I get a bit of a background view on it. I don't like the blue there. I might just immediately take that back to just a layer of, whoops, that'll do. Just a bit more warmth on that. It was just looking a bit too cold. Alright, now the same thing with the next one. Some burnt sienna. And you know what, I just have to always think about the shape, and could have been just a little bit more, not quite so straight. It's interesting how that just little bits of variation can make a difference, but I can actually still play with that later as well. It's just to point it out. This one again, now if I was painting normally, as in up the right way, I could push my brush. It doesn't make a whole bunch of difference either way. It can go either way. So dragging it, and you can always free to turn your board around and work whichever way suits you as well. There is times when working upside down is a benefit. Like for instance, if you had to put in the sky above other things, it's much easier to put the sky in while it is up this way, and then you get to work that way and have it dripping down that way if it was the thing. So don't know that I really want to go too much further here. I'm just going to come in with a bit of blue there. Oops, might just take that off. Okay. And again, looking at getting some nice deep dark happening. Whoops. That's fine. See, this is where the ultramarine immediately pushes it into with those extra colours, the dark green plus the burnt sienna, it pushes it into the dark green straight away, or the dark at least, even if it's not totally. My brain is obviously on go slow tonight, so feel free anytime to finish my sentences. I'm okay with that.
You know what you mean anyway.
Good. What I'm planning on doing just now is these are actually pineish trees, are they? Yeah, something like that.
So be hue on pine.
There you go. I knew somebody would know.
No, it's not really. I don't think we got any so valuable.
But anyway, whatever it is, it's these sort of things. And so there's these sort of leaves on it as well. So, and again, generally less is more at this stage. Just putting down the colour. I probably would like to make a bit of a connection there because at the moment I've got this pathway going through. But at the same time, not a bad idea just to let that be for the moment and think about it when I can stand back and actually have a proper look at what I'm doing. Now this is really quite filled in on this corner, so I will actually do that. So I don't really want that much white. Little bits of it are fine still. And I'm just going to come straight down into there. And see what happens in this area. Alright, I think that's about as good as it's going to get for the moment. We're always, and one more thing. And that's just to work on the bottom of this one. So that it doesn't read weird. Something like that. I can play with that a bit more later. Now I'm pretty sure that's not great. So I'll have to think about what I do, but I really just wanted to leave it there. In fact, I might just stand back a bit further so I really see what I can do. Hey? More cake? More cake would be great. I like the landscape behind him.
Yes, lovely. I love that bit.
And so I'm struggling to actually to cover it up, and so I could have left them out, quite frankly. I could have left these trees out, but that would defeat the purpose of me teaching you. So obviously I have to do something with this still because they're looking a little bit strange. Yeah, okay. This one in particular really does need to be. So be it. Let me just bite the bullet. Let me just do my stuff on this one here. It has to be down here. It really does. Would be nice, but no, there was a reason.
Such a difference, though.
Sorry?
That's made such a difference, though.
Oh yeah, yeah. I knew I wouldn't get away with it, but it was worth a try. And I think I'll just, again, I think actually I'm going to make more of that in the middle as well. I think I really just want this to be all the way over on this side. And just little bits in the middle. See, just having that connected there changes that space entirely. And so it now reads far more interesting than having a little pathway down there. I can still play with this, but I just needed to get something down that, again, just made more sense. There's times when I just, oh really, do I have to? But you know you do. So, alright, I think I will leave it there though, and I'll have a decent reconsider. So I think that actually did make a difference. I'm still not happy with this one, but I'll see where I go with that one in the meantime. Okay, that's enough to give you a start on these two trees, I hope.
I really don't care.
Part of the process is stuffing it up. Part of the process is having another go. And hopefully even when the tutor stuff's up, and then perhaps takes you through another step on how to I'm hoping you perhaps are learning something slightly different than you
But
might
it's just
otherwise.
amazing that you can just keep adding and adding and adding.
Yeah,
Sort of fix things.
to an extent.
Yeah.
If I try to go too much more now, it's would change things up entirely. What I might do tonight is actually finish this off. Did you want to finish it next week with things being a little bit strange?
Tonight. I think tonight, just in case.
Just in case, I think so too.
I think who knows what next week will bring us.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So at the very least, if I finish mine,
Yeah.
that
You see the
way,
technique.
yeah,
That's
you
good.
get to know the bits and pieces and where we're going with it, and see what happens after that. All right, so let me revise where I'm going. I'm going to complete my somewhat disastrous painting. The worst part is, the thing that annoys me the most is I really like this area. And then I put this dirty great big tree over it. Now, having said that, let me explain partially why that happened. For starters, remember right at the beginning, I said I changed the format. Now, what this format, with it being long and skinny, allowed was for the trees to be on either side of a section of landscape in the middle. And that's what draws you in. Whereas now that I've got my lovely landscape in the background, I don't actually have room for two trees. It would have been so much better if I had left that one out at the very least. If I had left them both out, I wouldn't have been disappointed either, quite frankly. But anyway, there's certain things that are happening that are good. Love the landscape at the back. These trees have suitably pushed that house back, and it's sitting in a landscape now at about the right size. It definitely is in the middle distance now. Because it's on this little bit of a ridge, a hill, or whatever you like to call it. I'm still totally undecided. I think this one is now going to have a tree trunk, a branch coming out of here, so that I've got a reason to put a bit more foliage there. And I think I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and make sure and bring some foliage in here as well. Having done that, again, stupid, because that is way too big in comparison to what the branches are here. So if I've got branches that are this big at the top, they certainly should be this big at the bottom. So yes, I could just conceivably bring those branches right over to here, cover up all that lovely landscape in the background, and I would totally hate my painting instead of just partially. What do I do? Sorry?
Make that tree's foliage go.
I think I'll have to, because I certainly don't like that. And I think I'm going to make that be part of that, so that at least, at the very least, it's going to be, which one does it belong to? I think that's all I can do. So let me try that for the moment. I'll just do that straight up. Let me just get that going. And no, I've not got the right colour happening, but that won't be too hard to find. So what I could do is leave that one the way it is and make more of this one too. There's also that option. It's been a while since I've done a demo I really don't like, but I don't think I have any choice. I think I've just got to
It's teaching us a lot though.
Oh, that's the whole point. That's why I'm not. That's why I will
It's teaching me
continue.
a lot anyway.
Is because the thing is, firstly, you get to see that even a tutor doesn't always do it properly. Secondly, you get to see perhaps a little bit of how, when something goes wrong, there is opportunities to do something about it, and then happily tear it up later on if necessary. Actually, I won't, because there's a blank piece of paper on the other side, which I will then demonstrate another painting on. So I'm going to pretty much cover this whole section here up with paint, because I think if I don't have this area, I might just have a little bit of something happening in the middle, since yeah, I'm not totally feeling it tonight, but anyway, let's see what happens. And not really thinking too much about shape, of course, because we're on a bad ride tonight, but a little bit of that, just kind of cute there. And a little bit more there. All right. It's reading slightly better. Still not massively great, but oh well. We'll leave it at that moment for the moment. All right, let me get on to this one. Yeah, I'll do it first, and then I'll come back and I'll do that little house. Okay, big brush is the first thing. Have plenty of paint mixed up is actually the first thing. Big brush is the second thing. And be aware to, again, you could put a little bit of water down, and I actually will do that. But when I say a little bit of water, it's just a skimming the page, so that in places, when we put lots of paint down, and it's going to be nice strong paint, I'm going to be using ultramarine and burnt umber this time, because I wanted it to go even darker than what I was using there. So dipping my brush into both colours, one on either side, and I'm going to start at the top, because the top of this tree is darker than the base. So have a bit of fun with it.
So you're rolling.
Yeah, I could be doing all sorts of things. Mostly what I'm doing is putting down paint as quickly as possible, and yeah, okay. So, I mean, I'm never quite sure how I hold the brush half the time. I think I actually put too much water down to start off with, even there, but it's okay. Now, I'm also introducing a little bit of burnt sienna back into this, because I've used that in other places, and that was coming. Now, I actually have to go across there, because you can see how that sort of gapped out a bit. I might just go a bit further over. And the same there and there. This tree is definitely in front of whatever's happening behind that. That tree is behind. So, which is one of the main reasons I've left it till last, is because I can then go over anything that happened to be in it, in that space in the first place. A bit more burnt umber, a bit more ultramarine, doing a darker section here. I'm sorry, I can't see my reference now. So I'll put that up a bit further. Just still, even here, there's various areas into this tree. It's not just one dark mass of stuff. And so just to give myself an idea of where those areas are, just And again, I don't have to finish it all right now. I don't like what's happening there. I might just muck that area up. And something like that. So again, that's better. Yeah. So this tree is really important. It does set the scene for the rest of it. And so if you get this one, if you try and make it too light, it won't come across as being in the foreground as much. And so I'm going to leave it like that for the moment. Now there is some white in amongst there. There's two options. I could do it now or I could do it later to knock those back, and I'm choosing to do them now. So I really don't want to get too much. I really don't like them just at the moment. So just gently, I don't want them to be, I think I probably left them on there. So there you go. I may do the same reference several times. None of them ever, ever end up the same. Everyone becomes its own painting, and yes, there's similarities, but at the same time, rarely do they end up being exactly the same. So, right now I'm going to go back into here and finish off this foreground. As I said, I was happier with my background where it was before, but that's the nature of teaching, at least the way I teach. Now, what I need to do here on this house, whether it might be a little church even, I don't know, don't really care. But I do need to put some darks on it. Now, darks underneath the roof line. There could be a couple windows in there somewhere. Actually, part of what's happening here is that I don't actually have enough clue what is happening. I did see, yeah, I'd love one, thanks.
So 3 windows across.
Yep, see, there you go. In fact, I've got some green on there for some reason. I don't want that. So let me just find. So this is actually a better look of what this house is. So occasionally it's actually worth blowing it up, or a section of it, so that you get a better view of what you're painting. Really, that is wrong what I just did. So I'm going to soften that off and start again. All right. First time I've used a tissue tonight, just to dry that off a bit. Okay, so the doors are actually not that dark. They're hardly there at all, to be quite honest. And I might actually make them a bit warmer than what I was anticipating. So that instead of having doors, windows, whatever, and I really don't need them to be really well stated either. So I'm just going to, I think I'll just leave that like that though. And there was another chimney there somewhere. I might just put it in here, make it go back behind the house. I'm still making it up because I've done my sketch wrong in the first place. Funnily enough, tonight I'm not surprised. All right, and mostly what I want to do now is just muck that foreground up. You know what I'm going to do? I don't like that, so I'm just going to put a tree in front. It's all about trees in the landscape, isn't it? Thank you for being so accommodating.
We'll feel the same.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. When in doubt, cover the house. So, so that you could actually say it's just, yeah, it's starting to look like a church, yeah. Yeah.
It's only got to be a idea of a house.
That's right, a suggestion. That's my word. That's my word. I always use the word suggestion. And more often than not, it comes across much better if you don't have it be too spelt out. Anyway, so just again, a little bit of something happening there, and I don't think I'm. Again, I think that's probably enough. All right. So what I do need now is just a little bit of foliage here. Not foliage, a bit of grass or something happening just there. Bit of texture actually is the word I'm after. Just to bring that in, a little bit of texture here because it's a bit bland. Now, next things will be this foreground. Since I feel like I'm just going to have some fun with it and go back to having various textures, a bit of grass perhaps. You can always use whites. If you've got a little bit of dry brush or something like that, it comes across really nicely where grass and all those sorts of things are concerned as well. You might even be able to put a bit of just general glow. And again, don't have to go too much about it, just a little bit of dark under there can make all the difference.
What paintbrushes are you using?
These ones. They are Art Spectrum. They're Art Spectrum brand. And these ones are number 550s. And they're both number 8 brushes. Size, that is. Brushes can be very...
So are they sable or are they...
No, these ones aren't. When I get to some of this detail, I often don't want sables because they don't give me the result that I need. I need them to be a little bit more specific about the shape or the mark that I'm making. Actually, I don't even know what I'm doing at the moment.
I like that better than that one.
Oh, like this one better?
Yeah.
Good. Because at the moment, not quite sure what's happening with it. What do I need with that? What do I do?
What about putting a root of a tree across that big one?
Okay. I'll give anything a go tonight.
Or just leaving it.
Or just leaving it. There you go. One tree root. Maybe.
What's the... Not that one.
Not
No,
that
the one that's not.
This one?
No, the one that's not. Big one.
Oh, this one. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay, yeah, I'm with you. Just gonna maybe just muck that up a bit. I could just do a bit of splatter there, just because. Why not? I'm in that sort of mood tonight, so. No, I don't leave it like that though. Got to actually smooth it off a bit. Because those marks would look the wrong direction actually, is more to the point. But tree branch, tree root, something like that, somewhere around about there. A bit dark under there. Is that looking all right? Doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be.
That looks good. Yeah, looks very realistic.
Good. Got to get something right tonight. And even here, it's just it's a matter of contrast. It just needs to have some lights and darks, And the shape. Shape is also important. Maybe just a little bit of grass around that as well. And then I think I'll just call that one quits. I'll just do a little bit more on this tree here. And now it's still pretty wet there. So normally I would let it dry, but yeah, what the no. But yeah, I do like the texture. So what we need now is some hard lines. Almost hard lines anyway. And some contrasting in tone. And I am following the contours and working with what I've already got down there. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel and do something totally different. It often pays to emphasise what's already happening. Though I think that X section there needs to be darker. So I'm just going to go over that. Using the brown and the blue often also gives that warm, cool aspect to things like this, and that usually is a benefit. I'm going to darken this here too. There's a favourite little thing out there called mud. It's a lot harder to get than what you think it is, really. Yeah, really, mud to me seems to be something that's opacted, overworked. It's either has got no light shade left in it, or the paint is really thick and sitting on the surface. So more often than not, it's, like I said, it's much harder to get than what most people believe. That's my view on it anyway, so I don't get too hung up on it. And yes, I have done paintings where I think, really, you did that eventually? All right, I think I'm just about done. I'm just going to soften that in. Maybe put a little bit more colour there. That's better. And that there. Soften that off, and I think we'll call it quits on this monstrosity tonight. On this learning opportunity for all of us. Oops, hang on. Sorry. Oops. Now there's another learning opportunity for you. Don't go too quick, but more to the point, you pull your paper away from the inside, especially when it's wet. So we didn't actually want that last little bit of painting there either. So, okay, the whole night has been about what not to do. And, well, not entirely, but it's still okay. But yeah, no, it's been a bit of a fun, different night tonight. So, I actually probably do need a little bit of, that'd be right, dark around my house because it's not quite reading properly. Just a touch of something really dark. Just there, actually. Because at the moment it sort of looks, does need a couple things that look like windows, perhaps. Because otherwise it's just really not reading right. And so buildings do need to be straight. That is one of those funny little things about buildings. They need to have some straight lines on them. I think that's better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's it for tonight's effort. Life sometimes gets in the way, and so at the moment that's what's happened tonight. I'll let you in on a secret. This was the last class I held before closing down for the COVID-19 lockdown, with one class that had to be skipped. This week or so has been very unsettling, and this was reflected in my teaching tonight. I would like to say that I am unmoved by the events around me, and to an extent that is true, but I usually need some time to process the changes. By the weekend following, I was able to regain the calm and composure I needed by spending time in the presence of my God and His Word. So to recap the last 7 weeks. The course started with us painting single trees of assorted varieties, looking at their shapes. With firstly just grey and then with colour, we used our brushes to describe the features of each type convincingly. Moving on to bush scenes that included background and foregrounds, and gum trees as the focal point. We touched on composition, artistic license, colour mixing and use of palette greys. A change of pace with distant landscapes gave an opportunity to explore aerial perspective, softer colour choices and painting trees wet into wet so they became part of their landscape. This is especially where we had to work with our paintings as they developed, rather than impose on them our preconceived ideas, as that may not have worked as effectively. This aspect of the painting process is both challenging and rewarding, and it is most noticeable that each one of the class end up with paintings that are totally unique, even though everyone started with the same reference. The final painting brought together many of the aspects and elements that we have been using throughout the course, and even with it being challenging from a life view, there was still plenty to learn and discover within the subject of the night. I hope that you have enjoyed the subject of trees in the landscape and have learned not only about trees and how to paint them, but also useful techniques that can be applied to other subjects and references of your own choice. So continue to practice lots, play with enthusiasm, and most of all, enjoy the journey of art, with the expectation of excellence, not perfection. I'll see you in the next course. Cheers from Australia. This has been Rosalind's Watercolour Classroom.